I can tell you not very well, but I can also tell you what Gordon Gee did for sports here in town at Vanderbilt University, and he really raised the entire program here tremendously, and I think he deserves praise for all of that. Whether or not he can trust me or thinks my priests are holy hell the rest of the week is another matter altogether. But that was part of what was being tweeted out at that particular point in time. I've been really lucky in my career to have the chance to be around some absolutely great people. Here, number one, but to be certain, the people we've still kept in contact with over the years. Those times with the Buffalo Bills, including 3 years where I had to do a weekly TV highlight show on the team. You say, that's great, those Super Bowl Buffalo Bills. No, that was when the team was respectively 2-14, and then signed Jim Kelly, and by God, doubled the win total from the previous year. It came up with 4. Those were the years of Kay Stevenson as head coach, then Hank Bulla. And Hank Bulla probably fueled more stories than anybody I've ever been around for his malaprops. One day, the Bills tried to get away with a Canadian defense. You know what that is? 12 players on the field. And Mickey Schuler was still so wide open in the end zone for the game-winning touchdown pass, it was embarrassing. But on our post-game show, Hank came right in and told me, he said, you know, that just took the sails right out of our winds. That was the sort of thing we heard from Hank Bulla on a pretty regular basis. He also came into our weekly Wednesday conference call and thought there weren't many of us in the room. So he turned around rather theatrically, opened the door, looked out the door, and came back inside. Oh, I was just looking for your guys' other common parts. Not counterparts, but common parts. So Hank had some difficulties with the language, but then he was succeeded by a guy with a doctorate in English history from Harvard, a guy named Marv Levy. And he did okay with that club thereafter. Of course, to get rid of Hank Bulla, it was the first time I had ever seen a team purposely tank a game, as they did in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers that previous week. Next thing we know, Marv Levy is introduced as head coach on Tuesday. The club claimed a guy on waivers from the Houston Oilers named Steve Tasker, who became one of the best special teams players we have ever seen. They already had in-house Jim Kelly. They had Cornelius Bennett coming in very shortly. A guy named, if you remember the Dennis Hopper commercials? Bad Things, man. Bruce Smith and his shoes. So that got things going, and they went to 5 AFC championship games in 6 years. And of course the 4 Super Bowls, all of whom, or each of whom, ended in a pretty bad situation. But they got to those 4 Super Bowls, and I don't think any other team will ever do that again. Not 4 consecutive Super Bowls. And had they won the first one against the Giants, the infamous wide right, off the instep of Scott Norwood, I don't know if they ever would have gone back, because the hunger would have been missing. And I think we all know what an important role athletic hunger plays in success. And now we come to some other times in hockey where, in my time in Nashville, we've gone through 2 lockouts. And out of the first lockout was the Predators' most successful year to date, missing the 04-05 season. Then the demi-lockout, if you will, of this last year, where we're able to come back and play 48 games. I wish we could have added some playoff games after all of that, but if you have some questions, I'll try to answer those for you here a little bit later on. But this is the only city where I've ever seen, and how often do you get to see a franchise actually debut, but the only time I've ever seen a standing ovation for the opening face-off. October 10th, 1998. How is this sport going to go over here in Middle Tennessee at the NHL level? After years and years of minor league hockey, well, a standing ovation for that face-off the night against the Florida Panthers. And unfortunately, we couldn't even repay the fans with a goal. Got shut out by Kirk McLean and the Panthers that night. Several nights later, the first win in team history. And as you're an announcer, you can't wait. You're going to call the first goal in team history and know that it obviously didn't happen in the first game. Guess what happened? I didn't really get to call it. Video review determining that had the net not been knocked off its mooring, the puck shot by Andrew Brunette would have gone in. So it took about 5 minutes at least for that study of the video to determine that. And then I really wasn't of a mind to recreate that. So as it turned out, the first one actually shot into the net was taken care of by Denny Lambert. Got a little bit over exuberant about all of that. But the years here have been something special. I can't think of any other city, and this city is very similar to the one I left to come here, and that is Buffalo, New York, where you have the same lineup of sports. An NHL team, an NFL team, a AAA baseball team at the professional level. Go across the whole canvas of sport in North America, and that just does not exist. So, but this town got at one time, in 1 year, the NFL and the NHL. And until a couple of years ago, there was only one head coach for each of those two franchises. When you consider that in the time since Barry Trotz was named coach of the Predators, there have been over 160 coaching changes. It seems that most of them involve Mike Keenan, as he coached 4 different teams against the Predators. And unless we merge with the Continental Hockey League, we won't see him again for a while. He's just signed a contract to go with Metallurg Magnitogorsk. And as far as Chris, you can tell me, they're not on the schedule this year, are they?
Not this year yet.
Okay. As we do an interlocking schedule, maybe do some, that'll be a road trip, huh? Crispy, do you have your mucklucks? Because we're going to go to Metallurg and see a game there. But I've been also blessed to work with Terry Crisp for most of the broadcasts since we got put together here. And he really only was coming in to do one game, the telecast of the very first game. And all of a sudden, since he was being paid not to coach the Tampa Bay Lightning, as he would say, he was relieved of his duties. Others put that in more blunt terms, like he was using the fired word. But he was being paid not to coach them, so he had to find something to do. He came here, and lo and behold, it took. And I think this community should be very grateful for what he has done here also. So the Predators, bouncing through, going through those early painful years, taking 6 years to make the playoffs, then a whole year off because of the lockout, and then coming on strong to make the playoffs 7 of 9, and then missing this last year. It really has been a fun ride. It became much more fun after winning a playoff round in consecutive years, first against Anaheim, then an incredible run, if you will, against the Vancouver Canucks, and the last time around winning the opening round against the Detroit Red Wings. We have a picture that I think is a classic passing of the torch picture, the handshake line, which I think, folks, let me know if you agree. Do you think the handshake at the end of a playoff round is one of the greatest things in sports? I mean, sportsmanship. Now, I know there's been some guys over the years. Billy Smith, the truculent, combative goaltender of those great New York Islanders teams, would never participate in that line because he said, I have to work up this hatred for that team, and then all of a sudden I'm going to shake hands with them. So he knew how things best functioned for him. But for the most part, everybody gets out there. I've not seen a brawl yet result from the handshake line when a series is over. And most of these are extremely hard fought, extremely hard fought. I think we were watching that too with the Blackhawks and with the Los Angeles Kings. So the Blackhawks knocked out the defending Cup champs to move on to this current series. Okay, show of hands. How many of you stayed up until midnight, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, to see the actual end of Game 1 of this year's Stanley Cup Final? Show of hands. All right. How many actually woke up in their easy chair at, say, 2 o'clock in the morning, having attempted to do the same? Yeah, I mean, there was one game where I woke up and the overtime was still going on. So thanks to my DVR, which was running, I was able to catch up on it later on. I think this is, and it was called this by Pierre Maguire, who was working between the benches for NBC tonight. Spectacular theater. It is absolute gut-wrenching. Now, I'm a guy who, as a baseball announcer, enjoyed doing 18 and 20-inning ball games because you never know how it's going to end. One of my more thrilling 20-inning games ended with a passed ball. So I prefer the goal, the dramatic goal, to end things, as did that one the other night. A double deflection it took to beat Tuukka Rask and give the Blackhawks a one-game lead in the series. And for those of you who are Blackhawks fans, go ahead and give a round of applause for all. How many here who grew up in Massachusetts or in New England or Bruins fans? Yeah, okay. There we go. If you read USA Today this morning, you can see a long article on actor-comedian Dennis Leary, who is such a Bruins fan. He said here he'd been on the set all day shooting for an upcoming television episode of his show, and he had ordered food to eat when the game was over. And when the game was over, he hurt so badly he couldn't eat it. So that's what it's like to be a hockey fan. That's what it's like to be into it so deeply. And that's what we've seen here in Middle Tennessee from the very outset. And it was amplified. 2008, going down the stretch, the team had been sold to the local ownership group the previous summer and on in December of 2007. And it was going to be difficult for the Predators to make the playoffs. It was a tough grind to make it. We know now they did. But that was when something started here that has fascinated everybody else around the National Hockey League. And that was the non-scoreboard inspired television timeout standing ovation to urge the team on. It has become a regular part of Predators hockey since that point in time. The players marvel at it. Visiting media can't believe it if they were here for the first time to catch it. I think we really saw it when the Canadian media from Vancouver were here for those playoffs a few springs ago. They said this is a hockey happening city. And I think the one thing that we have seen removed, all the speculation about how hockey can't make it in Nashville, nobody there cares. Well, you people have helped disprove all of that and have raised the level of awareness of this as a true hockey market all across the National Hockey League. I get calls to go on shows in various Canadian cities, and they all talk about the level of intensity of the fans here. Now, I will admit, some of the Canadian cities, it's been approached as if it is a cathedral, a church, and the fans sit on their hands. Or in Toronto, they have the platinum level seats down around nearest rinkside, underneath which are bunkers filled with booze. And they tend to spend the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of each period down there in those bunkers. So you don't see too much audience participation from those who have put out the biggest personal investment. We'll probably see that soon in Madison Square Garden too. They have gone through, this will be their third and final summer of massive renovations, where they too have built said bunkers underneath the first level of the seats. But it's really been fun to watch this all develop. And from the time we moved here to just look out this window, and from the fall of 1998, our first day of training camp was in this building here, September 12th of 1998. And to see what is surrounding us now, instead of what in many cases in 98, and of course this was after the springtime tornado, what had been torn down was about to be torn down. And to see what surrounds us right now, culminating in the Music City Center, which some of us were fortunate enough to walk through a few weeks ago. Some people are still walking, I think, from that day. It would be, there's an entrepreneur out there, and I'm sure there is, in a Kiwanis club. Someone wants to put up a store where they sell really comfortable shoes there, probably could make out like an absolute bandit. That would be my feeling on all of that. So who knows, maybe we'll spark something in that regard. Do I hear the entrepreneurs starting to murmur already? The ideas are going there. Hey, there you go. There you go. And if you want to walk to ship your items, hey, make sure you have happy feet. Oh, by the way, I want to thank everybody here today for being here, including the winner. There's a winner in our midst here of the Philip Fulmer Lookalike Contest. At least it looks like his brother, sitting right back here, head up against Ron. Congratulations. You could be Philip Fulmer's skinny brother. And Kenny Rogers right next to him, yeah. And I should have recognized that a few years ago on our Halloween telecast. I dressed up as Kenny Rogers, And I didn't have too much trouble trying to pull that off, but my partner, Terry Crisp, decided that he would be Willie Nelson. So he had the tie-up kerchief and all that, and every time he tightened it so it wouldn't fall off his head while on camera, the braids came up. So he began to look like Willie Nelson, the Flying Nun. And so we had to do a little bit of alteration. One year also, I was Philip Fulmer because my mother-in-law said I looked so much like him. And Terry dressed as the Vanderbilt coach of the day, the man who now takes tolls down in Destin, Woody Woodenhofer. Woody, the mustache on Woody was starting to peel off just a little bit. So he appeared to be far more like a talk show host we had on the air here for a number of years, G. Gordon Liddy. So as the mustache was falling off, I just ripped it off his face and put it on the jack-o'-lantern in between us, and things worked very well thereafter. But we've done a lot of fun things and funny things together, and some have been tragic too. But we've worked our way out of all of that. But in other words, what George has said, I've worked in all the sports, and I've had the chance to run into quite a few great people in each and every one of them. And for a young kid who got interested in this game by sitting down, and I'm sorry it wasn't a Philco. That seems to be the thing that everybody talks about. I had a Zenith radio, 3 tubes next to the bed, and found a way to wire in a headphone so my folks wouldn't think I was staying up too late at night. But going across the dial and listening primarily for me to Harry Carey and Jack Buck and Joe Garagiola and Buddy Blattner on the KMOX and the St. Louis Cardinals broadcast. But then at night, finding Ernie Harwell on WJR in Detroit, finding Earl Gillespie on WTMJ in Milwaukee doing the old Milwaukee Braves. See, I've earned my gray hair. And listening to Halsey Hall, the Minnesota Twins on WCCO. And even dialing in 820 WBAP in Dallas years before the Washington Senators moved there and became the Rangers, and listening to the minor league Dallas-Fort Worth Spurs. I mean, I listened to them on a regular basis, and that's what captured my imagination and led me down this career path, for which I am very, very grateful. Now, I'd be happy to we have some time here, take some questions, and any questions you might have, baseball, hockey, football. If you want to ask more about Hank Bulla, I'll be happy to try to address that as well. Or we could talk about Marv Levy, Bill Pulley and company, and Jim Kelly, who fortunately, according to my report last Friday, he did have surgery to remove a cancerous growth on his jawbone, and they believe they got absolutely everything.
Sitting way up there in the rafters with where you and Coco Crisp sit.
That is his son, by the way. Coco, yeah.
Can you hear Big George yelling at the referees down near the ice?
I could hear Big George more clearly than I heard the Miami Heat broadcasters last night going after the referees. I thought Johnny Most was back among us. I mean, Johnny Most once, if you recall, there was the big playoff series with Philadelphia, and he referred to Ruland and Mahorn as McFilthy and McNasty. And how can they call that Collins? He was run over. Yeah, as Dave Collins just trucked over somebody, and the foul was called on him, unbelievably so. Yes.
Well, I was just wondering if you wore a fat suit when you did Phil Fulmer.
At that particular point in time, I didn't need to. Thank you, though. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Spurs fan. Congratulations. I think the Spurs are probably going to win because there's some sort of enigma there that is the Miami Heat. And I think the Spurs operate, probably function as well as a team right now, maybe better than any other team in professional sport. They have perfected what we gave the perfection mantle to the New England Patriots, how they just plug various people in. But I think, and there's a great feature piece on Tim Duncan in USA Today this morning, and Greg Popovich might be the coach of the last 30 years.
Yeah, just curious if in your dial spinning, if you ever got to hear Larry Munson.
Yes, I did. Yes, and I have a recording of him calling basketball when Larry Conley was playing for Kentucky. An absolute classic bit there. But I wish anybody in the room have any recordings they've held on to for Larry Munson? Because I'm with the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame, and we're looking to archive things like that. If so, contact me, pete@peteweber.com, because I'd love to pass them along. And I wish we had the recording of his infamous outburst during the Nashville Vols as well. I won't go into that here because of a mixed audience at this point in time. Next question.
So last year, I believe it was in the, I'm being tickled by a man here.
Okay. I thought we were on Demumbrian. Okay.
Last year, I think it was in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You guys are in a relatively small area up top there.
Oh, yeah.
How
the
does
photo
the
bombing of Chris
clown-
Chelios?
How does the clown get to walk in front of you? How does he have room? And if he was an employee, did he get fired? The guy that walked right in front of the camera in the middle of the common.
The guy named Chris Chelios?
I don't know.
That's who it was. There's a photo bomb. I think I have it on my computer at home. And you talk about restricted space. Yes, because it was the playoffs, we were down the way, and I'm not going to call it a press box at Joe Louis Arena, but an area reserved for the media. And from the camera to our faces was roughly this much space. And somehow or another, Chelios wrangled his way between us. There's a classic photo of Terry absolutely scowling at him as he was crossing in front, but it wasn't. Yes, indeed, it was caught on camera.
Pete, what do you think of the new division alignments for this season? And which leads me to the next question or statement. Nashville's going to be the most eastern team in the Western Conference.
Yes.
Would you like to have someday Nashville play in the Eastern Conference and play teams like Buffalo, Boston, Montreal, Toronto, New York every other week?
The travel will be easier.
Yes, for sure. And who's going to win the Stanley Cup?
The Stanley Cup right now, and not just because they won the first game. I just think we saw Chicago overcome things with their team speed in game number 1, and obviously it was not an emphatic win going into the third overtime to take it. But the fact of the matter was, it was the Bruins' big guns who gave them the lead. Milan Lucic with a couple of goals there. But then for the Blackhawks, you don't see Kane on the score sheet. You don't see Hoss on the score sheet. Patrick Sharp with a goal in that game. It was their role players who helped them score. It would be tantamount to thinking that, like in the World Series, when you had a big hero being Bucky Dent for the New York Yankees, rather than the big guns that they had at that point in time. So because of that, my evaluation at this point in time is the Blackhawks to go after it. Now, I also grew up with the Blackhawks and Lloyd Pettit calling the game, so perhaps I'm not able to overcome things with my heart and not go with my head there. Yes?
What would it take to get the Predators to that level?
It would take a year without injury, or at least a playoff without injury, and it's going to take, I think, some more size. The Predators need some more size. When you take a look at those teams right now, number one, I didn't believe the Los Angeles Kings made it out of the first round. That series that they had, 6 games with the St. Louis Blues, and I should point out, after losing the first 2 games, I don't know how anyone was surviving that to move along. So it's definitely, what do you say, that impact is mass times acceleration. If we want to go to the physics world there, that's what's needed. It helps to have skill with that mass, though. And I'm not talking about the Catholic Mass. Okay. Any other questions?
I have one. Why is hockey, once you're into it, so emotional? I mean, my 3 teams are Vanderbilt, the Predators, and Ducks.
We've seen you get emotional at the Vanderbilt games. Yeah.
But it seems to me, I mean, Lydia gets so mad at me because I've cried at the Predators, win or lose, like during the
ovation.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's just like hear the national anthem. I mean, it's unbelievable. But are y'all surprised as a group that Nashville has embraced the Predators like we have? I'm not, but I just wonder if anybody else has. Everyone been to a hockey game? Do y'all feel it when you walk in the building immediately? I mean, that's something special.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like when I was a kid and my dad would get me to Chicago Stadium and Detroit, Toronto, Montreal, Boston coming in, you could not wait. And it was good for my dad because I was so intent on the game, he didn't have to go to the concession stand that frequently for me. And by the way, speaking of Father's Day coming up, Many memories of my father, who passed away in 2006. But I guess the thing that showed our bond and showed my love of sport, my favorite baseball player growing up was Stan Musial. And a couple of things on that. Number one, I found out he had died just before we went on the air with the opening game of this last season on January 19th. That made it a little bit difficult. But Dad knew how much I loved Stan Musial, even though my father was a Cubs fan. So he goes to the principal of my school. I was in 7th grade at the time, as Stan is playing his last year in 1963. He goes in the principal's office and says, my son is not going to be in school tomorrow. There will be no questions. That was to take me to Wrigley Field to see Stan Musial's last game in Chicago on September 25th, 1963. Not that I remember it, but that was the bond between father and son right there, as it was expressed perhaps at its highest point. Anything else, folks? Thank you. You've been a very kind and attentive audience.